Imagine this scene. It's midnight, the world is quiet, and she's lying in bed staring at the ceiling. Her phone is still glowing faintly on the nightstand after another endless scroll through Instagram and TikTok. She's seen countless messages that day, everything from fire emojis to "you're so hot" DMs, to compliments that sound like they were copied and pasted from Google. Most of them barely register anymore. They roll off her like water on glass. But then, there's one sentence, just one, that she can't shake. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't trying too hard. But it hit her differently. It made her feel something. And now she can't stop replaying it in her mind. That's the secret most men never understand. Words only stick when they make her feel seen. The compliments that live rent-free in her head aren't the ones every guy throws around. They're the rare ones, the ones that cut through the noise, the ones that touch her identity at its core. Think about it. How many times can she hear "you're beautiful" before it stops meaning anything? Sure, it feels nice in the moment, but beauty compliments are like sugar, sweet, easy, and gone in a flash. What you want to give her is something that feels like nourishment, something she digests slowly, something that lingers in her mind long after the words were spoken. Here's why this matters. Compliments are not about manipulation. They're about connection. They're proof that you're paying attention, that you see her not just as a surface-level image, but as a multi-layered human being with thoughts, dreams, and struggles. Dale Carnegie once said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. And when you touch that craving with authenticity, you instantly set yourself apart from 95% of men." This is the foundation of respect, attraction, and trust, all rolled into one. So what?
It's the first compliment that has the power to keep her awake at night, smiling into the dark, secretly hoping you're thinking of her too. It's not about her face. It's not about her body. It's about something most men completely overlook. Let me share a story. A friend of mine once dated a woman. We'll call her Sarah. Now, Sarah was stunning by anyone's standards. The kind of woman who, when she walked into a room, heads turned. Naturally, she got compliments all the time. Guys were tripping over themselves to tell her how gorgeous she was. And yes, she liked it, at first. But eventually she admitted something almost no man expects to hear. She said, "It's nice to be called beautiful, but it doesn't stay with me. It doesn't make me remember them." So what did? She told me about a moment with a different guy. He wasn't the tallest, richest, or most handsome. But one night, after a deep conversation, he looked at her and said, "The way you explain things makes me see the world differently. I love how your mind works." And Sarah said that compliment replayed in her head for weeks, not because it was cheesy or romantic, but because it was rare. It showed that someone had finally looked past the obvious and valued the part of herself she cared about most, her intelligence, her perspective, her thoughts. And that's the key. Complimenting her mind taps into something called self-verification theory in psychology. This principle says that people crave validation for the parts of themselves they most want others to notice. If she's proud of her creativity, her wit, her problem-solving ability, or even her way of looking at life, and you recognize that, it creates an almost electric spark. She thinks, "Finally, someone actually sees me." And that spark? That's what keeps her up at night. But here's where most men mess this up. They go too generic. "You're smart." That's just as empty as saying, "You're pretty." To make it unforgettable, you need to be specific and observant. Watch her closely. Listen to her carefully. Then say things like, "The way you think about problems makes me want to step up my own G." You connect ideas in a way that's so refreshing. It makes conversations with you addictive. "I love how curious you are." It feels like you never stop learning, and it's inspiring. These are not lines you can copy and paste. They only work when they're true. That's why they're powerful. They prove you're paying attention to her inner world, not just her appearance. And trust me, that kind of attention is rare and unforgettable. The benefit of this goes beyond attraction. When you compliment her mind, you're not just making her feel good for a moment, you're planting seeds of long-term trust. She begins to associate you with growth, with stimulation, with being truly valued. She doesn't just think of you as a guy who likes her, she starts to see you as a man she can respect, someone she wants to keep around. And when respect and admiration fuse with attraction, that's a combination that lingers long after the conversation is over. Compliment 2. Admiring her impact and presence. Let me tell you a story to illustrate this. Years ago, I knew a guy named Daniel. He wasn't flashy. He didn't drive an expensive car or wear designer clothes, but there was something about him women couldn't forget. I once asked a woman who dated him, what was it about Daniel that made him different? She thought for a moment and said, he made me feel like my presence had weight, like the way I show up in the world actually mattered to him. One night, she told me, they were walking home from dinner, and he casually said, when you're around, you make people feel calmer. It's like you bring this energy that makes everything lighter. She said that single sentence replayed in her head for months. Why? Because it wasn't about her looks or even her mind. It was about her impact, the invisible way she influenced the world around her. And that's the magic. When you compliment her presence, the way she makes people feel, the effect she has on a room, the energy she brings into your life, you shift the focus from what she is to who she is. And when someone feels that their essence is being noticed, it hits on a whole different level. Psychologically, this ties into something called the looking glass self, the idea that we form part of our identity based on how others reflect us back to ourselves. When you tell her that her presence makes people feel inspired, safe, motivated, or alive, you're giving her a reflection of herself she might not even fully see. And that reflection becomes a part of how she sees you, too. But again, the key is specificity. Don't just say, you've got good energy. That's vague and forgettable. Instead, try something like, when you laugh, it makes everyone else around you loosen up. You don't even realize how contagious it is. The way you comfort your friends, I don't think you see how much they rely on you. I like how you can walk into a room and somehow make everyone feel like they belong. Notice how each of these is not just about her. It's about the effect she has. And that's why it lingers. It makes her imagine herself through your eyes. And if what she sees is someone valuable, radiant, impactful, she'll want to keep you close. The long-term benefit? Complimenting her presence subtly frames you as someone who's already envisioning her role in your life. You're not just saying, I like you right now. You're saying, I see the kind of woman you are, and that's someone I'd want around. This is where compliments move from attraction to emotional bond. Compliment 3. Recognizing her unique struggles. Strengths. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman I once interviewed for a podcast. Outwardly, she looked confident, successful, put together, the kind of person everyone admired. But behind the scenes, she had gone through years of hardship, taking care of a sick parent, working 2 jobs, dealing with setbacks most people never knew about. One day, someone close to her said, I know you've been carrying more than people realize, but I really admire how you never let it turn you bitter. You somehow stayed kind. She told me she cried that night, not because it hurt, but because for the first time, someone had acknowledged her quiet strength. That's the essence of this third compliment. Seeing not just the surface she shows the world, but the battles she's fought, the resilience she's built, the values she's held on to even when it wasn't easy. Complimenting her in this way communicates something incredibly rare. I see you, all of you, and I respect you for it. Psychologists call this recognition of core identity. When someone acknowledges not just your skills or traits, but your story. And stories are what truly connect us as humans. When you connect to her story, her struggles,
her growth, her quiet strengths. You're touching the deepest layer of attraction, emotional intimacy. So how do you do this without sounding heavy or dramatic? Again, it comes down to being observant and sincere. Instead of surface-level flattery, try something like, "I know you've worked hard to get where you are. I admire how you didn't let setbacks define you. You always stay true to yourself, even when it's not easy. That's rare, and I respect it. The way you take care of people around you, I don't think they realize how much heart it takes." These are not compliments you can give lightly. They require you to pay attention, to notice her actions, her values, her resilience, and that's exactly why they work. Because when she hears them, she realizes, this man doesn't just see my smile or my looks or even my presence. He sees my journey. That's unforgettable. The long-term effect? When you give her this kind of compliment, you don't just live in her thoughts for a night. You plant yourself in her heart. Because once a woman feels that you see the strength in her struggles, the beauty in her uniqueness, she doesn't just think of you as attractive. She thinks of you as someone she could build a life with, someone who makes her feel truly understood.